When my daughter told me she'd sold the beach house her father built with his bare hands, something inside me broke. She thought she was saving me from loneliness. But what she didn't know was, that house held more than memories. It held a secret, one that would teach her the lesson life never could. Sometimes love looks like letting go, and sometimes it looks like standing still. I still remember the smell of the ocean that morning. Soft salt and early sun melting over the horizon. I was standing by the window holding my cup of coffee, watching the waves roll in just like they had for 30 years. It was quiet, until I heard her voice. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." I turned slowly, hoping maybe I'd misheard her. But no. She stood there, my daughter Angela, one hand on her suitcase, the other holding her phone like it was her lifeline. Her eyes didn't tremble. Her voice didn't crack. She'd already made up her mind. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. The words, "I've sold your beach house," echoed in my chest, like a hammer. My beach house, the one her father built for us before he passed. The one where Angela took her first steps, where we carved our initials into the kitchen wall, where we watched every sunset together after his funeral, because I couldn't bring myself to leave. And now, it was gone. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why, because I knew if I spoke, my voice would break, and she'd see what she was really taking from me. Not the house, but the last piece of peace I still had left. Instead, I looked at her, my own daughter, and said softly, "I see. That's all." 2 words, and yet they felt heavier than the ocean outside. She sighed. Not the sigh of guilt, but of relief, like she'd been waiting for this moment, like she was finally free from me. "It's for the best, Mom," she said, already glancing back at her phone. "You don't need this place. You can stay with me in the city. It's too quiet here and, well, you'll thank me later." Thank her. She didn't even look up to see the tears I swallowed down. In her world, she was helping me. In mine, she was burying me alive. As she left the room, I turned back toward the sea. The sunlight caught on the framed photo beside the window. Robert and I, our arms around each other, both smiling like life couldn't touch us. "Looks like she's selling your dream, Robert," I whispered. "But that's all right. She doesn't know yet." Because what Angela didn't know, what no one knew, was that this house was more than a home. It was a promise, a lesson, and I had one last thing to teach her before she destroyed everything her father ever built. You see, I'd already been here before, years ago, when life took something I thought I couldn't live without, when I lost Robert, when I lost everything except this ocean view and the strength to rebuild from the ruins. That day, watching my daughter walk away with the papers that said "sold," I realized I was about to lose again. But this time, it wouldn't be my end. It would be hers. Not because I wanted revenge, no. I loved that girl more than my own breath. But love, I've learned, isn't about saving someone every time they fall. Sometimes it's about letting them hit the ground hard enough to learn what gravity really feels like. So, I let her go. She thought she was in control. She thought she'd taken everything. But deep down, I knew. She'd just walked into a storm she wasn't ready for. The papers she signed didn't just move a house. They moved a legacy, and while she was busy chasing money, I was about to remind her that life doesn't run on profit. It runs on purpose. Because there were things written in her father's will she had never cared to read. Clauses that protected this land, secrets that even she didn't know existed. I took another sip of my coffee, let the waves roll in, and whispered, "You'll understand soon, my child. One way or another, you'll understand." As she drove away that morning, her taillights fading down the sandy road, I stood on that porch barefoot, the wood warm under my feet, the air thick with salt and silence, and I made a promise, not to her but to myself, that I wouldn't stop her. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't even tell her what was about to happen. Because some lessons can't be taught with words. Some life has to carve into you with pain. She thought she sold a house, but what she didn't know was that she'd just sold the one thing she couldn't ever buy back. Her peace. And before this story ends, she'll learn, the hard way, what that means. They say mothers and daughters are mirrors, one showing the other what she once was, the other showing what she might become. But somewhere between my reflection and Angela's, the glass cracked. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It was in the small moments. The forgotten phone calls, the short visits, the polite hugs that felt more like obligations than love. But before all of that, before the distance, there was laughter. There was warmth. There was us. When Robert and I bought that little beach house, we had no plans of growing old there. It was supposed to be a vacation spot, a place to rest our bones between busy months. But then life happened. Bills, work, and the constant rush of surviving. That house became our escape. And after he died, it became my heartbeat. Angela was only 22 when I buried her father. She'd just graduated from college, full of dreams, fire, and a stubborn streak that could light up a city block. She'd always been like that, even as a child. Headstrong, confident, always certain she was right. I admired it once. I even envied it. But over time, that fire turned into something else. Pride. After the funeral, she moved back home for a few months. She said it was to take care of me. I believed her. I thought maybe grief would bring us closer. But grief doesn't work like that. It's a silent wall that builds itself between two people, even when they're standing in the same room. I'd find her sitting in Robert's study sometimes, staring at his old watch, or flipping through the pictures on his desk. And when I tried to talk to her, she'd get defensive. "Mom, I'm fine. Please stop hovering. Hovering. That's what she called it. I thought I was comforting her, but maybe I was smothering her. Still, a mother never stops trying. But one night changed everything. It was a stormy evening, the kind that makes the windows hum and the sea rage. Angela had gone out with friends. I stayed up waiting for her. Old habits, I guess. Around midnight, she stumbled in, soaked and furious. "You went through my emails?" she shouted. I blinked. I hadn't. But she'd left her laptop open earlier and I'd only closed the lid after seeing her inbox flashing with unread messages. I didn't read them. I swear I didn't. "Angela, I didn't." "You did. You never trust me. You treat me like I'm still a child." Her voice cracked. Not from anger, but from pain. And before I could stop myself, mine did too. "Maybe because you act like one." The words left my mouth before I could pull them back. She froze. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. That night, she packed her things. She didn't leave for good. Not yet. But something inside her did. And when she finally moved to the city a few months later, she never looked back. Calls became texts. Texts became rare. And when she did visit, it was all polite smiles and quick glances at her phone. I tried to understand. She was busy. She had her own life. But sometimes I wondered if she was running away from me, or from the version of herself that still needed me. Then about a year ago, I got a call. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "Mom, can I stay for a while?" I didn't ask why. I just said yes. When she arrived, she looked tired, not just physically. Something deeper. Her confidence, that proud spark, had dimmed. I made her tea. I didn't pry. But after a few days, she finally broke. She'd been in a relationship. A long one. He left. Took her money, her trust, her joy. And just like that, my daughter, my strong, fiery Angela, came home with her heart in pieces. We spent the next few months healing in silence. She'd sit on the porch most mornings, staring at the ocean like it could give her answers. I'd bring her coffee and pretend I wasn't watching. For a while, I thought we were finding each other again. We cooked together, laughed, even planted roses by the porch. But one thing hadn't changed. Her restlessness. She hated the quiet, hated the small-town pace. Every time the wind howled through the old windows, she'd sigh. "Mom, how do you live like this? Don't you ever want more?" And I'd smile and say, "This is more, sweetheart. You just can't see it yet." But Angela couldn't stay still. When the wounds on her heart started to close, she began to search again. Not for peace, but for control. She took over my bills, my finances, even offered to help organize the property paperwork. I thought she was just being thoughtful. I didn't see it coming. She started asking about the beach house, its worth, its upkeep, whether I planned to sell. I told her no gently. "Every time. This place is my home," I said. "It's all I have left of your father." She'd nod, but there was something behind her eyes. Something that looked almost calculating. Then one afternoon I heard her on the phone. Her voice was soft, polite, professional. She didn't notice me standing in the hallway. "Yes, I can send the listing today. It's a good offer. The paperwork's almost ready." For a second, I couldn't move. My chest felt tight. Listing, offer, paperwork. I should have walked in. I should have stopped her right there. But I didn't. Because deep down, I needed to see how far she'd go. I'd spent years saving her from her own mistakes. Maybe this time, she needed to make one big enough to change her life. And so I said nothing. I let her believe I didn't know. I watched her prepare the documents, smile at the phone, walk through this house like she was already gone. The night before she told me, I stood in the same kitchen where she took her first steps. I touched the marks on the wall. Her height chart from when she was little, Robert's handwriting beside it. I thought about the girl who used to run into my arms, the one who used to whisper, "Promise me we'll never sell this house, Mom." And I wondered how that little girl had grown into a woman who could. But still, I didn't stop her, because sometimes the only way to reach someone who's drowning in pride is to let the tide take them. So when she walked in the next morning and said those words, "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house," I didn't fight her. I just let the ocean inside me go still. I woke up that morning to the sound of gulls and waves crashing like they were warning me. The house felt different. Like it already knew it wasn't mine anymore. Angela was pacing the kitchen, dressed sharply, her phone glued to her ear. She didn't even look up when I came in. Her voice was crisp, confident. The kind she used when she wanted to sound in control. "Yes, Mr. Blake," the buyer's agent confirmed everything. "We'll sign today at 3. My mom will be ready." "My mom will be ready." She said it like I was just another line item on a checklist. I poured myself some coffee, my hands trembling just a little. I could have stopped her right there. I could have said, "Angela, that house isn't yours to sell." But I didn't. I wanted to see what she valued more, money or memory. When she finally noticed me, she gave a faint smile like nothing was wrong. "Morning, Mom. Big day." "Big day?" I asked softly, sitting across from her. She nodded. "We're going to close the deal today. You'll finally be able to relax, Mom. No more maintenance. No more stress." Relax. That's what she thought she was doing. Rescuing me from my own life. I looked out the window toward the sea. The morning light hit the water just right, like gold melting into blue. Robert used to say that sight was better than any paycheck. "Angela," I said quietly, "did you even ask me if I wanted to sell?" She sighed, already irritated. "Mom, we've talked about this. The property is old, it's expensive to maintain. And you're alone here. It's not practical. You need something simpler." Her words were rehearsed, the kind you use when convincing yourself more than someone else. I just nodded slowly. "And where exactly do you think I'll go?" She hesitated. "I found a lovely apartment downtown, near the mall, close to the hospital. You'll love it. Downtown. Concrete and sirens instead of salt air and birds." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. Robert and I had dreamed of retiring here. We'd painted the shutters ourselves, built the deck plank by plank, Every inch of that beach house held a piece of our lives. But my daughter, my only child, looked at it and saw inconvenience. I took a slow sip of my coffee, then looked at her again. "Angela, is this about money?" She froze. Just a heartbeat. But I saw it. That flicker in her eyes. Guilt, fear, maybe both. "Of course not," she said quickly. "It's about doing what's best for you." I didn't push. I just nodded again. "Then I guess I'll start packing." The way her shoulders dropped told me she thought she'd won. But she had no idea the story she'd just started writing for herself. The hours passed slow. She kept moving through the house, sorting, labeling, organizing. Her voice steady, her expression unreadable. I watched her like a ghost might watch the living. Silent, unseen, mourning. By noon, she was dressed for the meeting. Cream blazer, gold earrings, hair pulled back tight. She looked so much like me when I was her age, it hurt to breathe. She came to my room holding a folder. "Mom, I'll need your signature. Just a formality." Her tone was casual. Too casual. I took the folder, pretending to glance through it. But I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it was. The transfer deed. The only thing she didn't know was that I'd seen it before. Weeks ago. The night I overheard her call, I'd found the drafts in her desk drawer, and while she slept, I'd read every page. Slowly, carefully. And then, I made one small change, a single line, a clause so subtle no one would notice unless they knew what to look for. Robert had been a lawyer. He'd taught me how to protect what mattered. So when I saw my daughter trying to sell away our legacy, I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I protected it, quietly. That morning I signed the document with a steady hand. She smiled, relief flooding her face. "Thank you, Mom. You'll see. This is the best thing for us. Us. As if we were still a team." We drove to the closing office together. The ride was silent except for the hum of tires and the occasional buzz of her phone. She looked so sure, so proud of what she was doing. The office was all glass and steel, cold, modern, efficient. The realtor, Mr. Blake, greeted us with his perfect smile. "Mrs. Turner, such a pleasure to meet you. Your daughter has been wonderful to work with." I smiled politely. "Has she now?" Angela laughed softly, placing her hand on my shoulder. "Mom's just emotional. This place means a lot to her," I wanted to say. "More than you'll ever understand." But I kept quiet. They went through the paperwork, page by page. I signed where they pointed, slow but steady. Every line felt like a goodbye. When the deal was done, Angela beamed. "It's official," she said, hugging me. "You'll thank me for this someday." I hugged her back, even as my heart ached. "Maybe I will," I whispered. "Maybe you will too." That night we came back home, or what was left of it. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. I walked through each room, memorizing the sound of the waves through the windows, the smell of the sea in the curtains, the quiet hum of a life built with love. Angela was on the phone again, laughing. "Yes, the transfer went through. We'll move tomorrow morning." Tomorrow. That word felt like a knife. I went to the porch and sat where Robert used to read his morning paper. The old boards creaked under me like they were sighing. The ocean stretched endlessly before me. Calm, knowing, and I whispered into the wind. "You see this, Robert? Our daughter thinks she's saving me, but she doesn't know she's selling herself short, because what Angela didn't realize was that sometimes the biggest lessons don't come wrapped in kindness. Sometimes they come as the echo of your own choices. And she was about to hear hers loud and clear. The next morning the sun rose like it always did. Gentle, golden, unaware that everything had changed. Boxes sat by the door, labeled in Angela's perfect handwriting. Kitchen, books, miscellaneous. She'd packed my memories into neat, color-coded cardboard. She was humming softly. moving through the house with the energy of someone starting a new chapter. I just sat at the table, my hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, watching her. "Mom, you should start getting ready," she said brightly. "The movers will be here by 9. Her voice was cheerful, too cheerful, like she was afraid to stop talking. "Where are we going first?" I asked. "To the apartment. I already got the keys yesterday." "You're going to love it." I didn't respond. I just watched her move, so confident, so sure she was doing the right thing. She didn't notice the way my eyes followed her. The quiet sadness behind my smile. Around 9, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. A man stepped out. Tall, mid-40s, expensive suit, polite smile. The kind of man who looks like he's already calculating everything before he speaks. Angela's face lit up. "Mr. Bennett, I didn't think you'd come personally." "Of course," he said smoothly. "A property like this deserves proper attention." I recognized him immediately. I'd seen his face on local real estate billboards. Marcus Bennett, homes that define luxury. He shook my hand warmly. "Mrs. Turner, it's an honor. You have a beautiful home here." I smiled politely. "Had, apparently," he chuckled awkwardly. "Well, the new owners are thrilled. They've been looking for something like this for years." Angela was practically glowing. "See, Mom? It's going to good people. Good people." I almost wanted to laugh. She hadn't even asked who they were. They went over the final details. The moving schedule, the furniture pickup, the bank transfer. Angela's phone kept buzzing with congratulatory messages from her friends. She looked like a woman who'd just conquered her life. But somewhere between her smile and the sound of those waves crashing outside, I saw it. A crack. Just a small one. When Mr. Bennett mentioned that the buyers were planning to renovate the structure, Angela hesitated. "Renovate?" she repeated. "Yes," he said casually. "They want something more modern. This place will be demolished by next month. They're building a glass front villa instead." The words hit the air like thunder. I didn't flinch. I just looked at my daughter, waiting. Her smile faltered. "Demolished." Mr. Bennett nodded, oblivious to the storm brewing in front of him. "Oh yes, completely redone. But don't worry. They loved the location. That's what really sold it." Angela turned to me slowly. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time in months, she looked unsure. I sipped my coffee. "So it wasn't about my comfort, after all," I said softly. "It was about the view." She blinked rapidly, trying to steady herself. "Mom, I didn't know. Didn't you?" I whispered. The movers arrived soon after. I didn't stop them. I watched as they lifted my memories. Robert's favorite chair, the photo albums, the seashell lamp he'd made me, and carried them out like objects. Every thud of a box felt like a heartbeat fading. For a long time we sat there, mother and daughter, surrounded by empty boxes and echoes of a home that had held both our ghosts. It wasn't about the house anymore. It was about the space between us. A space filled with pride, grief, and unspoken love. Angela finally whispered, "What happens now?" I looked around the room. Now we start over. We learn to build again. Not with wood and nails, but with honesty." She nodded weakly, then hesitated. "Uncle James, will he let us stay here?" I smiled. "He already said I could stay as long as I wanted." "And if you want to stay too," I paused, my voice trembling. "You can help me repaint the porch." "Your father would like that." Her eyes filled again. "You mean I can still stay?" "Of course," I whispered. "You may have lost the house on paper, Angela, but you found something far more valuable." The truth, that night, after she fell asleep on the couch, I stood by the window and watched the moonlight stretch across the water. I thought about Robert, about how he used to say the sea never stops forgiving the shore, no matter how many times it pulls away. Maybe motherhood was the same. Maybe we keep forgiving. Not because they deserve it, but because love never learns how to stop. I turned back toward Angela. She looked peaceful for the first time in months. Her hand rested on the same couch where she'd once cried over that man who broke her heart. Now she was healing in the same spot. Not because the world was kind, but because the truth had finally set her free. I whispered softly, "You're going to be okay, my girl. But you'll never forget this. None of us will." The next morning, Angela woke up early. She came to me on the porch, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Mom," she said quietly, "I called Mr. Bennett. I told him to cancel everything officially. I also called the bank. I'm paying the penalties myself." I looked at her, proud and a little heartbroken all at once. "You don't have to." "I do," she interrupted gently. "I need to take responsibility. It's time I stop running from my mistakes." I smiled, tears threatening again. "You sound just like your father." She laughed through her tears. "Guess I finally got something good from both of you." And as we sat there together, the ocean whispering in the distance, the house still standing, strong, patient, forgiving, I realized something profound. Sometimes it takes losing what we love most to understand why we loved it in the first place. Angela had tried to save me, but in the end it was me who'd saved her. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with the quiet, stubborn power of a mother's love. For the first time in months, the house was quiet, but it wasn't a painful quiet anymore. It was peaceful, the kind of silence that comes after a storm, heavy with truth, but gentle with hope. Angela was out on the porch when I woke up that morning. She'd been up for hours, I could tell. The coffee pot was empty, and there were fresh paint streaks on her jeans. I stepped outside and she turned, startled. "Morning, Mom," she said softly, wiping her hands on a rag. "What are you doing?" I asked, though I already knew. She smiled, a small, tired, genuine smile. "You said the porch needed repainting. I figured I'd start today." I looked around. The morning light brushed across the wooden boards. The sea breeze carried that familiar salty sweetness. And for the first time, my heart didn't ache when I looked at this house. It breathed. Angela bent down and kept painting, slow and careful. "I used to hate this color," she said. "It reminded me of how stuck you were here. But now, I get it. It's not stuck. It's steady." I walked over and picked up a brush, dipping it into the paint. "Steady," I repeated with a small smile. "That's what your father wanted. A place that doesn't crumble when the waves hit." Angela looked at me quietly, her eyes soft. "You really loved him, didn't you?" I paused, my brush hovering above the wood, more than words could hold. But loving him also taught me something. That holding on doesn't mean refusing to move. It means carrying the memory without letting it drown you. She nodded slowly, her gaze distant, as if seeing her own mistakes in the reflection of my words. "I think I held on to the wrong things too, Mom. To people who didn't want to stay, to ideas that weren't real. I kept trying to prove I was okay." I put the brush down and looked at her. "You don't have to prove anything, Angela. Not to me, not to anyone. The world's full of people pretending they're fine when they're falling apart. You're stronger than that because you can admit when you're not." Her lips trembled. "You really believe that?" I smiled softly. "You're my daughter. I've seen the fire in you since the day you were born. You just forgot how to use it for yourself instead of others." We spent the next few hours painting side by side. No shouting, no tension, just the rhythm of the brushes and the ocean's song. At one point, Angela looked over at the old photo frame sitting by the porch railing. The one with her father's picture. She hesitated, then picked it up and wiped off the dust. "He'd be disappointed in me," she murmured. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. He'd be proud you came back." Tears shimmered in her eyes again, but this time they weren't heavy. They were cleansing, like rain washing away the dirt after a long drought. That evening we decided to cook together, something we hadn't done in years. the kitchen filled with the smell of garlic, onions, and the faint hum of old jazz playing from the radio. Angela was chopping vegetables when she suddenly laughed. "Remember when Dad used to burn the toast every morning?" I chuckled, "and blame the toaster instead of himself." She grinned. "You'd pretend to believe him." "Of course," I said, laughing softly. He hated being wrong more than anything. The laughter lingered between us, light and genuine. And I realized how much I'd missed it. For years our conversations had been short, sharp, practical. Now they were soft again. Human. Angela set down her knife. "Mom, yes?" She hesitated. "I've been thinking. I want to start over. Not just with you. With life. I want to go back to school. Maybe study something that matters. Social work, maybe. Help women who've gone through what I did." I looked at her, surprised but deeply moved. "That's a beautiful idea." She smiled nervously. "You think I can do it?" I walked around the counter, took her hands in mine, and said, "You already have, Angela. You started the moment you decided to tell the truth." Her eyes filled again. "You really forgive me, don't you?" I nodded. "Every day." After dinner, we took our plates out to the porch. The sun was melting into the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Angela leaned back in her chair, sipping her tea, and whispered, "I never thought peace could look like this." "It's quiet," I said. "But quiet can be good. Quiet means you've made peace with the noise." She looked at me with a small, teary smile. "I wish I'd listened to you sooner." I shook my head gently. "You weren't ready. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to break before we understand how much we can hold." She turned to face me fully, voice trembling. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I reached over and took her hand. That's not how mothers work. Later that night, I found her sitting by the water again, her journal open. She was writing, her pen moving fast, as if trying to catch up with the thoughts she'd kept locked away for years. When she noticed me, she smiled faintly. "I'm writing a letter to Dad," she said. "Not to send, just to talk to him." I nodded, sitting beside her. "That's a good thing. Talking helps." She looked up at the stars. I told him I finally understand what he meant when he said love isn't a feeling. It's a choice. Every day, even when it hurts. I felt tears sting my eyes. He'd be proud of you for learning that. Angela closed her journal and rested her head on my shoulder. "I used to think strength meant fighting, but it's really just staying, even when it's hard." I smiled softly. "That's exactly right." The waves whispered in the dark, and for the first time I realized that the house wasn't just a home. It was a lesson. A witness to all our broken pieces, waiting patiently until we were ready to heal. Angela whispered, "You know, Mom, I think this house saved us both." I looked out at the moonlit ocean, feeling peace settle deep into my bones. "No, sweetheart," I said quietly. "Love did that. The house just gave it a place to live." That night, I went to bed knowing something had shifted. Not just in Angela, but in me too. The years of resentment, the walls of silence, the pain of loss. They were all still there, but lighter somehow, like we'd finally learned how to breathe again. When I closed my eyes, I saw Robert smiling at us from the porch, coffee in hand, the morning sun behind him. And for the first time in a long, long while, I whispered into the dark, "We're going to be okay." A month passed. The sea grew warmer, the gulls louder, and the house, our house, seemed to hum again with life. Angela stayed longer than she'd planned. At first, she said it was to help me with repairs. But we both knew better. She wasn't fixing the house. She was fixing herself. Every morning, she'd walk barefoot along the shore, her journal tucked under her arm, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. I'd watch her from the porch, my cup of coffee in hand, and silently thank the universe for bringing her back before it was too late. One morning, she came back from her walk smiling. "Mom," she said, You'll never guess who I ran into. Who? Mr. Blake, the realtor. I raised an eyebrow. Oh. She chuckled softly. He was walking his dog down by the beach. Said the buyer changed his mind after seeing the repairs. The deal fell through completely. He offered to relist the house for double the price if I was still interested in selling. I waited for her to finish. And what did you say? She smiled. Softly this time, not with pride, but with peace. I told him no. This place isn't for sale anymore. The words filled the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. Not for sale anymore. She sat beside me on the porch steps, pulling her knees to her chest. You know, Mom, for so long I kept trying to trade love for approval. I thought if I could just keep moving, earning, achieving, I'd finally feel worthy, I nodded quietly. And now, she smiled faintly, now I just want to be still, to build something that doesn't crumble when no one's watching. I reached over, brushed a stray curl from her face and said, Then you've already started. The next week, Angela began volunteering at the local community center. At first, just helping organize events. But soon she was running workshops, teaching young women about financial independence and self-worth. She came home one evening, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Mom, they offered me a full-time position. Director of Women's Outreach! I blinked, proud and speechless. Angela, that's wonderful. She nodded, but then her voice softened. You know what's funny? I used to think success was about the size of your office or your paycheck. But now, it's about walking into a room and feeling like I belong there, because I'm helping someone else find their strength. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. That's what real power looks like, baby. As for me, I started painting again. It had been years since I picked up a brush. But one afternoon, while cleaning out Robert's old study, I found my old easel, dusty, waiting. Angela came in as I was setting it up by the window. Wow, she said softly. You used to paint sunsets, right? I smiled. Not sunsets, moments. She tilted her head. What do you mean? I dipped my brush in color, looked out at the ocean and said, Sunsets fade, but moments stay if you paint what they feel like instead of what they look like. Angela nodded slowly. Then paint this one, Mom. Right now. Me and you. Here. And so I did. I painted us sitting together on the porch, with the golden light spilling over our faces, and the sea whispering in the distance. I painted her eyes soft again, her shoulders lighter. I painted myself smiling, not out of strength, but peace. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the notary's office. It was a routine property update, but it reminded me of the clause I'd changed months ago. The one I'd hidden in the sale contract. When Angela noticed the envelope, her brows furrowed. What's that? Just some paperwork, I said, placing it on the table. But maybe it's time you know what I did. Her eyes widened slightly. What do you mean? I sighed, folding my hands. When I first found out about the sale, I read the documents. I added a clause, a legal safeguard. It ensured that no matter what happened, the ownership couldn't transfer without my consent. I never signed it away, Angela. The beach house was never really sold. Her face went pale. You mean, even after everything? Yes, I said gently. Even after everything, because I knew you'd come back someday. And when you did, I wanted there to be something here for you to come home to. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She covered her mouth with her hand. You trusted me that much? I smiled softly. No, sweetheart. I hoped that much. She broke down crying, kneeling beside me, clutching my hands. I don't deserve you, Mom. I pulled her close. You deserve every good thing that's still ahead of you. Weeks later, we hosted a small gathering at the house. Just family, a few old friends, and some of Angela's new colleagues. Laughter filled the air again. The kind that wraps around walls and makes a house feel like a home. At one point, as the sun dipped low, Angela raised her glass and said, To Mom, for teaching me that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the only thing strong enough to rebuild what pride destroys. Everyone clinked their glasses, and my heart swelled so full I thought it might spill over. I looked around the porch, the same one that once echoed with arguments and silence, now alive with laughter, warmth and music, and I thought, this is what justice really looks like. Not revenge, not winning, just peace returning to the place it left. Later that evening, after everyone left, I stood by the window looking out at the ocean. Angela joined me, leaning against the frame. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked quietly. "Leaving," I repeated. "No, darling. I've spent my whole life chasing calm. I finally found it." She smiled softly. "I think I'll stay a while, too." I looked at her, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the angry, restless woman who'd once tried to sell everything away. I saw my daughter, the girl who used to collect seashells and call them treasures. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves and the smell of coffee. Angela was sitting on the porch, reading. When she saw me, she smiled. "Morning, Mom." I smiled back. "Morning, sweetheart." She handed me a cup, and we sat together side by side, watching the horizon turn gold. The world had the audacity to keep going. Tides rising, sun returning, life moving. And somehow, that made everything okay. The beach house was never just wood and paint and sand. It was our story. Broken, rebuilt, redeemed. And as I watched my daughter laugh again, really laugh, I whispered to the sea. "You were right, Robert. Some things are worth holding on to. There's a quiet that comes after forgiveness. It's not loud or proud. It's tender, like the sea when the tide rests after a long night of waves. That quiet lived in our home now. The laughter that used to echo through the hallways had returned. Not the loud, forced kind, but the soft, easy laughter that comes when you finally stop pretending you're fine. Angela and I built new rhythms together. Mornings on the porch, evenings cooking side by side, Sundays walking along the water, letting the sand bury the past beneath our feet. Every now and then she'd stop, look at the ocean, and whisper something under her breath. Once I asked what she was saying. "Apologies," she said softly, "to the girl I used to be." That stayed with me, because sometimes healing doesn't mean forgiving someone else. It means forgiving the version of yourself who didn't know better, the one who hurt, who hid, who lashed out because she didn't know what else to do. And Angela, she finally forgave her too. One afternoon, while cleaning the attic, I found an old box of Robert's letters. Yellowed edges, soft paper, ink faded with time. There were dozens of them, all addressed to me, written when he'd travel for work. I carried them down to the porch and sat with Angela. "Your father wrote me these when you were little," I said, handing her one. She smiled, unfolding the letter carefully. The words inside were steady, strong, just like him. He'd written, "If life ever makes you doubt love, look at the ocean. No matter how many storms hit, it always returns. It never gives up. That's what real love looks like." Angela looked up at me, tears shining in her eyes. "He always knew how to say the right thing, didn't he?" I nodded. "He did. And somehow, he always knew what we'd need, even after he was gone." That night, I placed one of his letters in a frame, right beside the photo of the three of us on the porch steps. It felt right. The past, the present, and the promise of what's next, all in one place. The house wasn't just ours anymore. It was part of something bigger. It had held our grief, our guilt, our healing, and now, our peace. Weeks turned into months. The seasons shifted gently. Angela's work at the community center began to bloom. I'd see women visit her here, young, scared, lost, and leave lighter, smiling stronger. She told me once, "You gave me roots. Mom. But you also taught me how to grow wings. That line nearly broke me. Because that's all I'd ever wanted. For her to fly. But never forget where she began. One evening, we sat on the porch again. The same old chairs, the same soft wind, the same golden horizon. Angela reached for my hand and said, "You know, Mom, I used to hate this house because it reminded me of everything I'd lost. But now, it reminds me of everything I found again." I squeezed her hand gently. Then it did its job. We sat in silence after that. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words ever could. The waves crashed. The gulls cried. And the sunset bled gold into the water, like the world was painting itself new, just for us. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of all the things I'd learned. Things life had taught me the hard way. That love doesn't disappear when people do. That forgiveness is an act of courage, not weakness. That even the most painful endings can become the most beautiful beginnings, if you're brave enough to stay through the storm. Angela's words echoed in my heart. Apologies to the girl I used to be. So I whispered one of my own, into the quiet dark. I forgive you too. And in that moment, I knew, truly knew, that both of us were free. The next morning I walked down to the beach alone. The water was calm, glassy, endless. The sky was pink and gold. The kind of dawn that makes you believe in new chances. I picked up a seashell, small and pearly white, and held it tight in my palm. "This one's for you, Robert," I whispered. Then I turned to the house, smiled and added, "And this one's for us. For the love that stayed." That evening, Angela came out to join me on the porch again. We didn't need words anymore. We just watched the waves roll in. Soft, steady, forgiving. And as the light faded, she leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "Home, Mom. This is home." I smiled, my heart full. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "It always was. You know, my loves, life has a funny way of bringing us full circle. Sometimes we think we're losing everything. A home, a person, a dream. When really we're just being led back to what truly matters. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It redeems it. And love, real love, always finds its way home. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments below. Have you ever had to forgive someone you love, or yourself, to find peace again? I'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this one, don't forget to subscribe to Auntie Grace Stories for more real-life tales of love, healing, and second chances. Until next time, my darlings, take care of your heart, and remember, even after the storm, the tide always returns.